Welcome everybody. Thanks for clicking on this video. My name is April Myerscough. I'm the grants coordinator with Florida Humanities. The National Book Festival 2023 is right around the corner. We are celebrating with the author of our Great Reads from Great Places 2023 selection, Christina Diaz Gonzalez. So the National Book Festival is one of the largest free literary events in the United States, held in Washington, D.C. every year. Authors and readers from all over the world come together for signings, panels, author discussions to share the joy and power of reading. Our 2023 selection for our young reader title is The Bluest Sky by award-winning author and Florida native Christina Diaz Gonzalez. Her work has been designated as an American Library Association's Best Fiction for Young Adult selection. Her work also won 2 Florida Book Award gold medals in 2022 and 2023, among several other commendations. Welcome, Christina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, April.
The Bluest Sky is about a young boy named Héctor and his family's harrowing immigration from Cuba to Florida in 1980s. What inspired you to write about this particular story?
What really attracted me to this story was not only my family connection, but the prevalence of immigration here in Florida, especially Cuban American stories. And so, my being Cuban American, I grew up hearing all sorts of stories from my family, and part of my family came over through the 1980 Mariel Boatlift. And so, having written a book earlier in time about Operation Pedro Pan in The Red Umbrella, which was loosely based on how my parents came to the U.S., I felt like there could be a continuation of the story 20 years later with the Mariel Boatlift, and perhaps incorporating not only stories that occurred in my family and friends, but just letting my imagination and try to encompass what really happened during those times.
Right, and so like you mentioned that your book, The Red Umbrella, talks about Operation Pedro Pan from the 1960s, and that you've also said that while this book isn't a direct sequel, there are some touches and some moments in the book that connect. Can you share that without giving away any spoilers?
So without giving away any spoilers, when I wrote The Red Umbrella, I felt that it was a standalone book. It was a story unto itself, and that there would be no sequel. Fast forward about a decade later, and I started thinking that perhaps it wouldn't be a sequel, but it would happen within the same universe, and maybe a couple of secondary characters. Right. We would now visit them 20 years later, and what would their lives be like? And so there are 2 characters from The Red Umbrella that do reappear. They are not the primary characters from The Red Umbrella, but they take a pivotal role in The Bluest Sky. Even though the focus of The Bluest Sky is this young boy, Héctor, and his 2 best friends, you see other characters come into play without giving away the spoiler.
Yes, I have read the book, and once you told me how it connected, I was like, I didn't even think about that. That's genius. So, you said that this is based on your family. You have a really great connection to it. So in addition to being a snapshot in history, both Cuban history and American history, you explore themes in the book about the importance of friendship and family, as well as having courage in the face of adversity. So what do you think readers can take away from Héctor's story?
So with Héctor's story, I'm hoping readers get a glimpse into the dilemma of immigrants, of having to make decisions, of leaving your homeland for, a better future, or perhaps leaving because you have no alternative. And at the same time, Héctor does showcase the fact of being a kid, that sometimes you don't see the bigger picture. And once you do, things come into focus. And at the end, even though there are some just very emotional moments and heartbreaking moments in Héctor's life, I hope the reader comes away with a sense of hope.
I read the book. There were some shocking and heartbreaking moments, but it felt like a very authentic story about that experience, even though I have no direct connection to that experience or didn't know much about it, truthfully, beforehand. So it's both an educational read and I feel like a very uplifting read at the same time. You mentioned in your author's note that this story is based on your family's experience immigrating from Cuba to Miami. How did their experience in turn inspire Héctor's story?
So I remember when at the time, my great-grandmother and my great-uncle and his son and his family came over to the U.S. through the Mariel Boatlift, and I remember meeting them all. And it was the first time that I really remember experiencing the effects of someone coming into a brand new country, a brand new culture, and how that must have felt for them. In addition, I have very dear friends who also came to the U.S. Through the Mariel Boatlift. Some don't remember because they were babies.
Right.
Others were a little older and do remember, and were probably right about Héctor's age in the book. Mm-hmm. And they told me their stories. And so basically bringing in all of those people and letting their stories kind of meld together and form a new story in my imagination is how Héctor came to be.
That's wonderful. So you've written a variety of books for youth, both traditional novels, but also graphic novels. So what is your process of writing when you're writing in mind for a middle grade audience, and how does that differ from writing a graphic novel?
So I guess the difference really is in the visualization. When I'm writing, whether it's a traditional novel or a graphic novel, I am a very visual creator in the sense I see the story as a movie in my head.
Oh, wow.
So I am trying to put into words what I am seeing in my imagination play out. When I'm creating a graphic novel, I don't have the talent to do the artwork, but I can imagine what the artwork would look like. So not only am I imagining the story as a movie in my head, I'm also imagining how it will look on the page and how it would break up into different panels on the page, and making sure that it captivates the reader so much as the words, but as what I hope the art will look like, and then keeping them turning the page. So that's the one big difference between the two styles.
Absolutely, definitely. Reading The Bluest Sky felt very cinematic. Like, I felt when reading it, I could picture what it would look like in my head too. So you did a fantastic job.
Thank you, thank you.
So that even though a majority of your book, again, no spoilers, takes place in Cuba, how do you think The Bluest Sky embodies Florida?
Well, first of all, the Mariel Boatlift greatly impacted Florida. It was, in 1980, over 125,000 Cuban immigrants came to Florida's shores in one summer. So that changed the course of Florida, of South Florida, drastically. And it really does embody the story of Florida, because Florida has always been this place of bringing new people into the state, whether it's people from other countries, people from other parts of our country. It's always a melting pot of different people and different experiences. And so the fact that it's highlighting this one particular child, one particular family's experience coming to the U.S., but it also reflects the hopes of so many people when they come to Florida, what they are hoping to find here.
You informed me that you are working on a new book. Without, if you can't give too much away, that's okay, but can you tell us a little bit about maybe what it's about?
So I have been working on a new book. It's a new graphic novel in the vein of my first graphic novel, which was Invisible, which is a story of 5 kids, loosely based on the movie The Breakfast Club that's set in middle school
Nice.
with some of the kids being recent arrivals and not speaking English. And so the book ends up being almost fully bilingual, so that if someone who is, learning English and predominantly speaks Spanish, they can read the book at the same time as someone who only speaks English and maybe is interested in learning a little bit of Spanish can also read the same book at the same time. And so I'm working on a new graphic novel, not with those same 5 characters, but with new characters, where there are also a couple of bilingual children involved. So the story will have that bilingual aspect to it.
That's awesome. We'll definitely have to keep our eyes out for it. Do you have a release date yet?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
The actual book has not even been announced yet.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So we don't have anything. It will probably be released sometime in 2025.
My last question for you today is that, of course, the National Book Festival encourages and inspires readers of all ages, but our Great Reads from Great Places is really to get young people involved and excited about reading. So, what was your favorite book when you were a kid?
So my favorite book, and probably the most impactful book that I read, was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine
classic.
L'Engle. Yes, it's a classic. And at the time, I did not want to read it. I grew up in North Florida, and I had some wonderful teachers and librarians, but I was really predominantly only reading one type of book, and I think they conspired to get me to broaden the scope of my reading. And they offered me a little extra credit, and I was one of those kids who, if you offered me extra credit, I would always do it. And so they told me just to read this book, and I thought, Wrinkle in Time has to do with time travel and science fiction, and I'm not going to like this, but I'll read it anyway. And I fell in love. I loved it. I loved that it was a female heroine, and she was so smart, and I loved all the aspects of science fiction, and it opened my mind to, well, if now I like science fiction, maybe I'll like historical fiction, and maybe of these other genres, I should give them all a chance.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much, Christina, for joining us. We hope that you follow along with our National Book Festival 2023 journey. Thank you so much. Thanks for clicking on this video.